What's up, nerds? I'm King,
I am JC3.
and we are back with another video. The long awaited Spider Man Brand New Day has dropped, and we saw it in theaters in 3D like the good Lord chose us to. You hear me? But before we jump into the review, I'm going to tell you, as I always tell you, if you like the things that we do here, we would love for you to subscribe to the page, subscribe to our social medias, like, follow, all the good things. Comment, let us know what you thought. This was one of the biggest movies of the year so far. It has already passed $1 billion globally and was only $225 million made. So they made a boatload of money, and I hope you saw it. But as usual, with no further ado, we're going to jump right in. And in this story, we leave right where we left off with No Way Home, where Peter is now existing as Spider Man with nobody remembering who he was. The only thing that I thought was really interesting about this part of the movie was they decided to do kind of this montage of time jump where they went from him watching Ned and MJ at their first year of MIT to the end of the montage where they were graduating from MIT. But in the midst of that, he has been all around the neighborhood fighting everyone from Tombstone, which was great. He beat up the Hand, which was great. He fought Tarantula, which was cool. Little small cameos of these characters, not big action parts, but at least we got to see that he's fighting some of his rogues gallery.
Yeah, bro. It was very cool to see him fight people like Scorpion. We saw a little flash of Boomerang in there. I love seeing Scorpion again just because that was a nice little call back to Homecoming, and we did see him a couple times throughout this movie. So just seeing him go through his rogues gallery, man, and really seeing him just live in New York, like the city of Manhattan. Like, I think this, at least for me, this is the first time we've really lived in the city of New York. I think the new director for this, that was kind of his intention, was to just really make us feel like we were swinging along with Spidey in Manhattan. And that's how I felt, man. Like, the city looked great. The detail on it looked amazing. And our Spidey's over here slinging webs, man. It was great to see.
It was fantastic, and you're right. To get to see New York fully fleshed out, of course, after the events of the Punisher's special presentation and after Daredevil's second, third season. It
Third.
was third. It was really good to see New York, and it's really good to see New York is a bit bright and shiny again. The biggest thing that they're dealing with right now is somebody keeps breaking into damage control and is trying to get some information out of them. Of course, Spidey comes in to try to figure out what's going on.
Along with the audience as well. We're trying to figure out what's going on, like all the while we have this unknowable force that is just body hopping from person to person, trying to find something or someone. That whole time watching the movie, it just made me think of exactly who this person is, but at the same time, what's making them do these invading very personal things to people. You know what I mean? Like, this person, it really was acting like a villain in this, I would say, from not really caring about what happened to the people that they were taking over. You know what I mean?
And what I do love about this beginning of the movie was it brought a character from the comics that we don't often see, who's a Spider-Man ally, and that's Detective Jean DeWolf, who he seemingly has a great relationship with, and you can see them kind of talking on the phone about not really knowing each other, but to Peter, that's kind of his only friend at the moment.
Yeah, the only one that he really knows. It was great to see that actress too. I know her from The Bear, and she does some great things. So I was glad that she was in this movie. Again, it also just shows how much time has passed since we last saw Spider-Man, and how he's really become a centerpiece in the city of New York. Like, they're actually acknowledging him for all the good things that he's doing, and she's a big part of that.
And Peter's on his day to day. He's getting those flowers every day, delivering them to Aunt May's grave, along his daily routines. One of the things that was interesting about the whole break-in was the rooftop scene. The antagonist is jumping from body to body and tells Peter, like, "You're the only one who can see me," and then tries to jump into his body, but seemingly can't really get in there.
Yeah, and from her jumping into his body, we get a quick flash of him sitting down on his bed, talking to Aunt May, which it looks like this moment occurred possibly right after she found out that he was Spider-Man after Homecoming. We get little bits of their conversation throughout the movie, but it's a really big payoff in the end.
I love the scene that he calls Yelena. Black Widow makes a great appearance in this movie, and he needs info because he knows that they were controlled by the Red Room. So is this some kind of mind control? At the moment, we don't really know that it's kind of a body swapping situation, if you will. But that scene with her being in the bathhouse and having Peter undressed to get in the water with her is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, that was a funny scene. I always like how they just try to incorporate, like, find new ways to incorporate comedy in the MCU. And I don't know why, but hearing Elena compare like small potatoes to big potatoes, I don't know why that was funny, but it was. But at the same time, I was excited for that moment just because, if anything, I feel like that was just the slightest hint that maybe, just maybe, we'll get Spider-Man in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars.
And your first little hint of, what this story is going to be is when Peter Parker or Spider-Man himself goes back to damage control after the break-in to talk to their director, William Metzger. And the moment that dude came on scene, the thing that popped into my head from their conversation in his office was like, I don't know about this guy.
Yeah, I knew about him. The only reason I know about him is because I know that actor from another show called Severance, and he initially plays like a similar character. You know, just a guy that talks nice, seems inviting, but behind the scenes, he's kind of dirty. Actually, really dirty. Actually, just his presence in this movie and seeing him as the head of Damage Control, which Damage Control really isn't looked at to be the good guys at all in the MCU. I already got a hint that he wasn't good.
Right. And then Peter finds himself back on his daily routine, going to get those flowers and then runs in to Ned and doesn't really speak to him, but ends up following him back to his house where they're having a party. And he kind of blends in as the party people, finds out that Ned has a lot of Spider Man information on his wall and is seemingly tracking Spider Man.
That was a great moment between the two. Honestly, I think that the scenes between with Tom Holland, Ned, and Zendaya, I think that's probably Tom Holland at his best as the character Peter Parker. Just because you see the look on his face, how badly he just misses his friends, and we see throughout the movie how much that's affecting him, that he's been away from them for so long. But just the scene where he sees Zendaya for the first time, MJ, and you get that friendly neighborhood reference, and he kind of chokes on his drink. It's moments like that that just make you miss the chemistry between these characters, and it just makes you root for Spidey, man. You want him to get his friends back.
Right. And I felt so bad for him in that next moment. MJ decides to go into the kitchen. He gave her the flowers that he was going to put on Ame's grave and said it was a housewarming gift. When he sees them in there, MJ has a boyfriend. Funny enough, I watched a couple breakdowns and looked at some information. They didn't really give that dude a name, but he also was the same dude who played Ezra in Ahsoka. He was the same exact actor. But once Peter sees them kissing, it breaks him. We see the probably saddest web slinging around the city that we have ever seen in our lives.
You're absolutely right on that, King. I honestly don't know what kind of needle drop they could have had with how sad he was swinging through that rain. It was sad to see, man. It just, you see the emotion on his face, how down he is. I mean, it had been years ever since he saw him, so it's not too shocking that she would move on. But still, the initial just visual of him seeing that, you could just tell it broke him so much, to the point where he starts feeling a lot of pain in his wrists. And all of a sudden, he looks in the mirror and our boy's eyes are black. And then I think that's when we start our metamorphosis.
Yeah, that is when he essentially goes to bed and he wakes up in the cocoon and he starts to realize he's outside, falls from the cocoon in between those buildings into the alley, catches himself with now his organic webs that I what's funny as hell about this is he starts to brush them off like they're gross to him, which I love that because it would be odd to have webs coming out of your wrist. And when he does that, he drops himself straight to the ground.
Oh my goodness. We felt that, man. We felt that fall all the way down to the pavement. Honestly, it kind of gave me like a flashback to Tobey Maguire's days as Spider-Man, just with the organic web shooters. So that was kind of fun to see. Also just fun seeing him try to train with the new organic webs, man. Like just when he was like testing them out and he's seeing them come out of his wrist and he almost almost vomits. I think all of us kind of would have had that reaction. Again, it's good. It's a good and bad thing for me, I would say, because it felt like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. So I felt a bit of nostalgia there. While at the same time, it's like I have seen this before in some ways, but still entertaining.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And from there now he's starting to feel overwhelmed with his new kind of powers. His senses are way over heightened. He can't really control. He's got a little bit of an anger thing going on. He doesn't know how to control the webs coming out of his wrists, which start to come out like a silly string can when he actually tries them on the roof. Great, fantastic scene of him really starting to get comfortable with that, and which leads him to go talk to somebody at ESU, which happens to be Professor Banner, who is teaching a class on quantum physics. And none of the kids in that class really care about the quantum physics of it all. They just want to talk about the Hulk.
All they want to talk about is the Hulk, man. So much so that one of the students is even dressed up like the Hulk. But it was great to see Mark Ruffalo back after some time away from the role as the Hulk. But at the same time, it was just great to see the dynamic between him and Peter, because I don't think we really ever had that in the MCU. Seeing how he has now controlled his abilities now, to where he can control the anger and still stay him. But he tells him, if you take this, little gadget off my wrist, you get the rah. And I like to say we did get the rah later on in this movie, but that is after we find out who our mystery villain is.
He now knows that he needs to create his own inhibitor to block those powers from coming out or to escalating up to the point where he's just overwhelmed by his new senses. As a young smart engineer scientist does, he makes his own suppressant device that doesn't quite work the way that he wants in the beginning.
No, not in the beginning. He tries to make it work, but he tries to combine his organic web shooters with his mechanical ones, but his body simply won't let him do it. And as you mentioned earlier in this review, when those powers, those sensibilities start to get a bit out of control, that's when we see our Spidey go super nuclear. I would say there's a particular scene that he has with Scorpion, who's not really Scorpion at this time, pushes him to the point where he straight up body slams our guy Scorpion and even goes as far as to take off this man's tail. Talk about a violation.
That was exactly what I was about to mention. That fight with Scorpion was kind of a real defining moment because even DeWolf was shocked by the way that he was carrying himself, especially when he picks up the Scorpion and slams him into the moving cop car, which flips the cop over and hurts, the cops there. And Peter kind of comes out of his own trance to realize that he just went, super sane on Scorpion. But what you realize is Scorpion is not Scorpion. It is that person who is still jumping from person to person inside of Scorpion's body, trying to get right back into the same building and look for the same information they have been at damage control.
Yep. And honestly, from there, what we also get is just more of Peter trying to control this new power that he has, these new sensibilities, to the point where we get a scene where he's talking with MJ, who is helping him with this inhibitor. Unfortunately, they have a moment where Peter believes that maybe, just maybe, Zendaya remembers him, you know, after they have a nice heartfelt kiss on top of a roof. And just for a second, we think that maybe, just maybe, our Spidey has MJ back. Then we have our hearts crushed, and so does he when we come to find out that it's not MJ. It is indeed this mystery villain.
Yeah, and at that moment, Peter knows that he's dealing with somebody. He knows that it's an entity, but he still doesn't know exactly who it is or how it's operating. But one of the things in that movie was that was one of the saddest moments because he allows himself to let his guard down to talk to MJ, who he thinks actually remembers through Doctor Strange's spell. Really, he's just being bamboozled. And he does save her life and ends up, taking her to a safe place with the next person I'm going to mention. But it was a really sad scene. But another dope scene that we did get, which we saw a lot of set photos from when they were actually filming this in real life, is the tank scene. This tank that is being controlled by this mystery person at this point, is trying to get into damage control. And he has this great chase scene with the tank, and in comes the Punisher, fresh off of his, big special. And now we have Frank Castle really living in the world as the Punisher.
Yes, and I will say it was great to see John Bernthal reprise his role as the Punisher in this Spider-Man movie. Honestly, I feel like out of all the supporting MCU roles, I think that he was the best in this. I'd say if Iron Man was Spider-Man's like father figure, the Punisher is probably like his hot-blooded uncle, because the chemistry that they have like on screen and behind the scenes is just amazing. So it was great seeing Spidey and Punisher on screen. Especially fun seeing them work together, fight together, just the dialogue they had between each other. You could just tell that these guys have worked on other movies before in the past, and I feel like they just kind of let them wing it and do whatever they wanted to do. Punisher doesn't take any mess, man, and he's still that guy with the code of, hey, you guys do it the sissy way, I'll say, but he does it the permanent way, and that carries throughout this whole movie.
Their relationship is amazing, but from there it kind of sets us off on the path of Peter trying to figure out. And in the midst of this, we're kind of jumping a little around in this section, but after the MJ scene, he gets a picture of someone in a car who is controlling the driver. That picture is of Sadie Sink, who turns out to be our mystery antagonist. And when he starts to do his research into who she is, we get the biggest reveal of this movie, that all the rumors, all the things that everyone thought were true. She is in fact Jean Grey.
Goodness. And when they finally revealed that, bruh, I mean, honestly, we kind of had an idea. We knew that it was her, but just to get that confirmation and to also see where they ran with it, amazing, great. I was kind of questioning like why they would put her in this certain role, given the fact that she's kind of been hurting a few people in this movie. But if you really think about it, and if you're really a comic book fan on this, and if you've seen other X-Men movies, I feel like this is the perfect way to introduce her character, just because we're already seeing that she has that evil inside her. You know, like she has that, I would say, that drive to do whatever it takes to get the results that she wants. And I feel like that could play a big part in future movies that she could be a part of.
I think it really truly makes her character a bit of a more complicated character than just, the Jean Grey that we've seen on screen so far, which is everything's been the Phoenix Saga, the Phoenix Saga. So, of course, we've seen Jean at some of her worst, but this really gives her some more complicated backstory as far as who she is and a little more agency. A lot in the comics, Jean Grey was like the damsel in distress who needed Scott to come and save her, and in our reality, that's not who Jean Grey is. She has a lot of powers that she can barely control. She's doing her best in this movie with the limited stuff that she knows. When she wants to be OP, that is a character that can be completely OP.
Absolutely, 100%. And we know that this character can be 100%, like 100% OP, not just because of the powers that she can use herself, but because of the other powers that she can have based off the people that she decides to control. Because we also see that in this movie. Because unfortunately for our boy Spider Man and our boy the Punisher, she gets her hands on Dr. Banner. And we know that Dr. Banner's the Hulk. And with her not necessarily being able to control the Hulk after a certain time, we get the Hulk in all his big buff glory, and we get that awesome fight scene between Spider-Man, Punisher, and the Hulk. Man, like honestly, I gotta say, my favorite scene in the whole movie. What about you?
Easily one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's probably the favorite. The scene you didn't really expect. You knew that she was controlling the Hulk because again, now she's walking into damage control, but she's walking in herself. And you see the Hulk's inhibitor on the floor. And as Jay has mentioned, a little bit earlier, Peter, who had MJ at the Punishers, to keep her safe after the disembodied moment of her being controlled, they figure out how to make his inhibitor actually work, and the issues that he was having earlier in the movie thanks to his goggles and the radiation given off from there. So now he's got this perfect thing, but when you unleash a Hulk, it is something else. He starts off, she's controlling Smart Hulk. He's still Banner and the Hulk mix, but the damage that he takes starts to kind of break that consciousness. And Banner says, "She broke something in me." And Peter tries to give him that inhibitor and says, "Put it on you." But it's kind of too late. Banner is starting to now go into full old school Avengers Ultron Hulk that goes from 7 foot to an 8 foot monster and starts to wreck the place. He also gives Peter Parker the Loki treatment of slamming him around repeatedly, which was fantastic. The thunderclaps, and we really get to see the Hulk flushed out as the Hulk.
Yes, yes. That was, oh my gosh, that was so amazing to see. I also think it was great just to see the Punisher try to save Spider-Man for a minute, and you just see him come in just laying waste, like just unloading the whole clip on Hulk, and is obviously not doing anything. And Spider-Man's talking like, "You gonna tickle him to death?" But no, again, the dynamic with them was great. My main question from that fight scene though, after it ended, is do you think that, or do we think that maybe Hulk knows who Peter is now?
Well, there's a possibility in that. There's a real big possibility in that because at that point, Jean Grey knows who Peter is, and she was in his head. So there could have been some information transfer while she was in there inhabiting the Hulk and Banner's body that would lead her to lead Banner to know later on that, oh yeah, that's Peter.
Well,
And
well, well,
Peter
rem-
was the boy.
well. Remember though, Hulk, but she wasn't in control of the Hulk by the time that he completely took over. Like it was just Hulk. But then the reason that Hulk let Spider-Man go is because Peter was like, hey, it's me, it's your friend. No, it's Peter. And then he stopped. So maybe that woke something up.
Well, you actually have a point because in the comics, when Peter erased his mind from everybody, Banner didn't remember who he was, but the Hulk did. The Hulk knew exactly who Peter was.
Hmm.
So there's a solid possibility that that same thing could have happened in this movie where, yeah, Bruce Banner doesn't remember who Spider-Man is, but the Hulk sure does. And he remembers everything, but he's just been trapped inside of Banner's head the whole time.
Yep, yep. They could use that. And by the way, folks, if they do end up using that, remember we said that here on this channel.
Exactly. Exactly. But it starts to, lead us into our biggest part where, Jean Grey takes over the Punisher, which is equally a problem while Spider-Man's been dealing with that and dealing with some of the hand. She is about to crack open this giant safe where the director Metzger and his team are hiding out, and at this point she's under the impression that there is something that they're hiding in there called VMAX, and of course she's looking for her sister. And at this point they actually get that bad boy open, She gets an inhibitor put on her neck, and Mesker hits her with a tranquilizer dart, and things seem to be like they caught the bad guy.
Yeah, but then from there, we actually get some backstory on our dear Jean Grey, and we see a flashback scene between her and her sister. I believe her name was Sarah, and we see them. Her sister is essentially showing her how to use her powers and how to travel from body to body. We see that little moment between them, and then her sister Sarah goes off to get ice cream, ends up getting caught by damage control, but her sister uses her mind control on Jean to make sure that she doesn't interfere and get captured as well. So with that, we see why Jean is who Jean is looking for and why she has taken these measures to do so.
And it really firmly says that while she's complicated, she's not necessarily the antagonist of the bad guy of the movie. She is an antagonist in the story, but really it is damage control and it is Metzger who is the bad guy. You get a nice, in that flashback, you get a nice look over, and he's sitting in the car while the damage control guys are taking the sister away, and he's very conscious of what he's doing. They all in all want to try to get these powers to put them into people they could trust and have these psychic abilities for whatever damage control wants to do going forward, which is not a good idea.
No, not a good idea at all. Because if a child has these type of powers, like and has a good reason, for using them the way that she is, like what's going to happen if you give it to the general populace? Not good at all. But honestly, like we said earlier, damage control they haven't really been the good guys in the MCU to begin with. So to figure out that they're really the bad guys here, it wasn't a shocker. It was just a way to progress the story forward. But also we see just how grimy damage control is as well. Like they're willing to just torture Jean to get get her powers out of her, to the point where they keep Jean in the same room that they had her older sister in when they were doing experiments on her. And we have quite the big revelation there too.
Yeah, one of the things that is interesting that we kind of skipped over that I wanted to add in this part is MJ reads the letter that Peter had left her, and is another crushing moment where she gets to hear the whole backstory of why he did what he did, and a letter telling her that, who he was and he was going to come find her. And she doesn't remember him at all. And she tells him, as much history as they have, she doesn't remember it and she doesn't love him the same way. But she ends up doing something really nice. He has to take her back home because, of course, she doesn't have a car or a phone at this point. And when they get back to the house, he gets to meet his biggest fan, which is Ned Leeds, who ordered 5 banh mi's for them to eat.
Yeah, bro, because Spider-Man was in the building. He knew what time it was. Yeah, but I love that scene between all three of them. Again, seeing all three of them together, that's Tom Holland, Peter Parker at his best. In that scene in particular, he was still in the Spider-Man suit, which shout out for him being in the Spider-Man suit majority of this movie. I actually really like that. Seeing them, just talking, their dynamic together. You're seeing MJ like sketch them, like which was a little callback to what she would do in detention and Homecoming. So yeah, that again, little callbacks like that. Hey, that's why we love watching these movies. That's why we have this MCU, because it's more about just exploring more about these characters who we've seen for years, seeing how much they've grown, and just enjoying them in their happy moments as well as their sad ones.
And that's one of the defining moments that Peter realized that damage control was lying to him. Metzger tells him earlier on in the movie, he asks him about Sarah, and he says Sarah is just some girl from the past, and that Gene probably got that from inside of his head. But when he talks to MJ about her being taken over, she doesn't remember anything. It was one moment she was there, the next moment she was somewhere else. So they have no memory of what happened in between, which lets Peter to know that he'd been lied to, and then go back to the damage control building because he realized Jean Grey was actually the victim in this and not the bad guy.
That's right. He goes off to rescue Jean Grey now, who is currently being tortured by the damage control peeps. And while she's being tortured, she notices a vent at the sorry, she notices a vent above her. What that vent says at the very bottom, if you really look at it, says Vent Max. The EN is taped over. Is the ENT is taped over, so all you see is VMAX. And it is in that moment Jean realizes, and us as the audience realizes as well, that her sister died in that room, and that was the last thing she saw.
That revelation is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking to realize that the last communication wasn't some kind of secret code or wasn't some kind of serum or something like that that she thought it was. It was simply the last thing she saw before she perished. And that damage control had been torturing her to figure out her powers, and Jean realizing that she's in the same seat and they're going to try to do the same thing. But Spider Man at the time is scrambling through the building. He had to get in his stretches first because he's not in high school anymore. But he's going through the building trying to get back to her and runs into the hand. That is one of the defining moments for him when they are fighting the hand, which he's amazed by how the hand does these coordinated attacks, and when they climb onto each other and uses each other as leverage and momentum to attack their enemies, he's amazed by it. But you get these two stories happening at the same time that kind of lead you to one place, right?
Yeah, and pretty much from there, this is Peter Parker's defining moment in this movie when he's up against the hand. It's really where he has to make a choice of whether he truly accepts what's happening to him and the changes that are occurring, or if he's just going to fall to his knees. We see the battle between him and the hand, which again, sick to see them on screen. They completely take out his mechanical web shooters, so it gets to the point where he has no choice but to fully accept his metamorphosis. And from there, we get a pretty badass OP Spider Man equipped with indestructible skin, indestructible webs, tossing hand members everywhere, saving hand members for that matter. I think my favorite part of that whole fight, when he had like just hit one of the hand members, and the hand member just went flying, and he was about to go into this pole. Spider Man just stops him right there, slings that web, saves him from getting killed, because our Spidey doesn't kill. He's still a hero at the end of the day.
Right. And simultaneously, while that's going on, Jean is, for lack of better words, losing her shit and her grief. And she is now becoming extremely OP. Now getting not only her psychic ability that has now bursted out a bubble, which freezes everybody within it, that goes about a mile out into New York, where people are just frozen in place, but her telepathic or her telekinesis now comes in. The team from Damage Control, watching this from their control room, is now compromised. The glass is broken. She has now pulled Metzger over. She's got him held in place with these glass shards pointing at his head, kind of like what happened to Doctor Strange in Endgame. Peter's not only fighting the hand, he's actually at the moment still kind of fighting Jean Grey because he's there to save her. She's like, I'm not weak. You need to save them. And she asked him the defining question before he gets OP. And she says a defining statement to him that is, you can't be Spider-Man and Peter at the same time. And he says, I'm going to be both. Or, yes, I can. I'm both. And that's what everything that Jay is talking about right now, the ultimate scene of him taking that inhibitor off, letting his eyes go black, and just going full OP on everyone in the surroundings. Plus, he does that cool spider tornado thing that he does at the end that traps everybody at once. I don't think I've ever seen that done. And I'm playing Spider-Man 2 on PS2 or PS5, and he can't do that in there either.
You don't do that?
Nah, I wish. It would be very helpful, trust me.
Yeah, yeah, but that was an amazing scene. Also, just knowing that he had to break through her psyche in a way. Like once he finally catches up to her and tries to stop her from killing Mesker, she again mentions like, "Hey, I'm a lot more powerful than I was before. So don't try me." Before she couldn't enter his mind, now she can. And Peter says, "Hey, go ahead, and come on in." And we finally see the full scene between Peter and Aunt May right after she found out he was Spider-Man, but except this time with Jean being inside Peter's mind, she acts as Peter. Also, as we mentioned before in this episode, the flashback that we get with Jean and her sister Sarah, they kind of hint at the fact that they really didn't have a mother figure in their life. So with Jean taking Peter's spot now in his memory and talking to Aunt May, that kind of helps her get a moment that she never really had of feeling safe with a paternal figure, which I think ultimately is what saved the day. Not necessarily, maybe not even necessarily Spider-Man, but the memory of Aunt May, which I think is beautiful.
I think you absolutely are right, man. That was the moment for her. She hasn't really had anyone maternal in her life. She hasn't had anyone who could support her. She did mention in the other flashback that her mom left when the girls got their powers, in puberty. So she has been without a figure. And now she, seen through Peter's eyes, she's seen someone who is telling her that yes, the road is hard and it can be lonely, but you're never truly by yourself. And it's kind of a message of finding your chosen family versus the one you were born with, and giving her the positives that she needed. However, at the same time, the Punisher has been set up on a rooftop about a mile and a half away with a 50 cal sniper rifle, trying to do his best from the outside and save Peter, has now shot that sniper rifle right at Jean Grey. And Peter does the most heroic thing that, of course, we know Peter Parker would do. And he jumps in the way and gets hit in the back with a 50 cal sniper rifle.
Yeah, and we see the impacts of that hit because it sent our Spider-Man back a few feet after that. My goodness, but yeah, he took the bullet for Gene, man. And at that moment, it's your first time seeing a Spider-Man movie. You guys might have thought that maybe this was the end of our Spider-Man. Me and the King here, we weren't really worried about anything. But the way that they saved our Spider-Man, I think, is what is very intriguing because they reveal later on Jean Grey was actually helping him breathe that entire time that he was getting operated on in the hospital. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that logic. That's okay. We're talking about superheroes. It's all good. I just thought the visual of Punisher carrying Spider-Man into the hospital was a little funny. It was supposed to be played up like a serious moment, but I kind of chuckled a bit.
It's funny. That's actually a comic accurate. That was, I think, one of the Punisher's first or second appearances in Spider-Man. And something similar happens, and he actually, that comes from the cover of him actually carrying Peter. I don't think he carried him in the hospital, but it's kind of a recreation of that. One of the more interesting parts of that is that this is Peter going into the hospital. Obviously, people are going to find out his secret identity, and at this point, you have one of two options. And one of those is that Peter, kind of like the scene with Toby Maguire and on the subway, where the staff just decides to kind of keep his anonymity, or kind of what the Punisher says is he kind of kept everyone back so that they wouldn't see who he was, and kind of kept his mask on until a certain point, even though when Peter wakes up and talks to the Punisher, he does not have his mask on because he has to have a breathing apparatus over his face. That's a little here nor there, but one of the best parts is this heartwarming part of the movie, and Peter is alive.
Yes, yes, Peter is alive. Also, just to touch on what you just said, again, this is neither here or there, guys. We still really enjoyed this movie. One of the main things I thought about thinking about it afterwards, how in the world is the Punisher able just to walk around and do whatever and not get arrested after he just shot Spider-Man, and I think he's also been on a rampage too, killing all types of other bad guys without the approval of the law. So how is it that he's able just to walk around here and sit in Spider-Man's bed after he shot him, be like, hey man, just waiting on you to wake up? Neither here or there. It's all good. We love superhero movies around here.
I think also but that was one of the sweetest moments, that it probably had been a day or two, and the entire city had now heard that Peter Parker, not Peter Parker, but that Spider-Man was down and was knocking on death's door. And they had candlelight visuals. The Empire State Building changed their colors to the blue and the red. New York is really pushing for Spider-Man to get well. And when he opens his eyes, Frank has been sitting there the whole time waiting for him to wake up. One of the funnier but also cute moments, because Frank sheds a tear and Peter doesn't waste any time on giving him some shit about that he actually cried.
Yeah, he made him cry, man. Made him cry. I laugh at his ass too. As hard as he tries to act throughout this whole movie. But yeah, like that was a nice little moment. Again, you could just tell that these guys are boys, behind the scenes in real life. And I feel like that scene was just them being like, hey man, just let me laugh at this fool real quick, man. And then boom, scene.
And Peter gets well. They don't really do a time jump, but I would say maybe it's in the same day. Frank says to him that, "Hey, since you're well, and I got your mask and your suit's tore up, but I got your mask right here, and I have a plan to get you out of the building." And the next scene is Peter walking out of the buildings into this crowd of people who are having this visual for him, start to cheer that Spider-Man is up, but they're not looking at him.
Nope, they're not looking at him. They're looking up inside Spider-Man's window. But wait, how is Spider-Man up there and Peter Parker's, Tom Holland's down there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we get the great visual of the Punisher having Spider-Man's mask on, waving out to the people like, "Urgh, urgh, urgh." That was a nice funny moment, I would say. But also another touching moment for Peter, just because while that's happening, he's just looking around him. He's seeing all the people that love him, that support him, that are rooting for him, that have signs up in his name, and even sees little kids with his uniform on. One kid in particular he sees, and he slings a web at him. And I felt like that was a great moment, man. Just because that I think that's just speaks to the inner child in all of us who still likes these superhero movies, man. Because at one point we were kids and we were doing the same thing, and now we're adults. And whether you have a kid or whether you don't, I think we all looked at that. We all like just saw that moment and we were like, see, this is why we feel justified to be superhero fans.
Absolutely. And one little detail that we actually left out was inside Peter's room was balloons, cards, flowers from all kinds of people that have, well wished him. But one stood out in particular, and that was the drawing from MJ that she drew of him and Ned sitting right there for Peter to see. So that meant they probably both came by to see him while he was down. Whether he had the mask on or off, I don't know. They definitely got to see him. We pick back up with Peter back on his daily routine. He went to go get his flowers. And who's in that same cafe? Ned. And he's going to walk out. This time, he decides to stop and talk to him.
Yes, he decides to stop and talk to his boy. And initially, Ned's just like, oh, okay, like, sure. But then he remembers that he's the flower guy from earlier in the movie. And, just straight away, Peter's like, yeah, for sure. But, gives that secret handshake or friend handshake, whatever you want to call it. But then all of a sudden, you see Ned goes from looking confused to all of a sudden, it's just like muscle memory. You know what I mean? He just starts to do the handshake right along with Peter. And then it's that subtle realization on Ned's face that maybe, just maybe, he knows who his boy is, because we hear him say, Peter, like, oh, Peter. And then from there, ladies and gentlemen, Spider-Man Brand New Day ends. But I will also say that we get a bit of a hint of where he could be going, because before that scene happens, when he takes the his flowers over to Aunt May's grave, he thanks her for what she did for him, and also reassures her that he doesn't think that he's going to do this superhero thing alone anymore. Whether that means he's going to go to the new Avengers or possibly just team up with the Punisher remains to be seen. But hey, we will see in due time, I think.
We sure will. And the last thing we'll talk about is this post credit scene, which could mean a lot of different things. It's enough information that we probably could make a whole episode on it, but we'll talk a little bit about it before we run out of time today. The post credit scene shows a app that Ned made that shows you where Spider-Man is due to sightings of Spider-Man. And he can't seem to find Spider-Man, and then all of a sudden, the image on this app moves over, and in the middle of space, there's the Spider Man logo, which means Spider Man is out there somewhere. The question then now kind of stands is this Battle World? Where now Peter has been transported into Battle World? Is he on a space station, sword or something with Nick Fury? Or is it another Earth that's starting to make an incursion and is looking at a different Spider-Man? Hint, hint, maybe Miles Morales. There's a lot of options this could mean, but we only got the one post-credit scene.
Yeah, we got the one post credit scene, and I have a beef to pick with the MCU and Kevin Feige when it comes to that. Stop being stingy, bruh. Like, they could have at least given us a mid credit scene. Like, we could have at least seen Jean Grey going up to upstate New York and see her in front of an X-Men mansion, or just a regular mansion. Stop teasing us so much on this stuff. Post credit, the post credit was okay in my opinion. Spider-Man's in space, like you said, it could be various places that he could be. I'm thinking Doomsday or Secret Wars. But what I also know is after we get to Doomsday and after we finish Secret Wars, Marvel, please, when we build up this new saga, give us better post-credit scenes and mid-credit scenes, bruh. We deserve it at this point.
I just want to piggyback on that thought because the thing I'm glad they gave us something. The thing that pisses me off the most is in a lot of these movies, they just say the titular character, Thor will return, Fantastic Four will return, so and so will return. We know they're going to return, but give us a scene, whether it's funny or whether it leads to something, give us something. You guys have set up the mid and post credit scene for the entire movie industry, and you need to give it to us. So quit playing around. That's the end of our movie. And the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to give our overall opinion of these movies, and we're going to play a little ranking game of where you think all four of these rank in your heart. And just for everyone, I think Jay's is blasphemy, but we don't have a lot of time. So we're not going to get into the full discussion, but I think it's blasphemy. However, my final thoughts on this movie before Jay takes us on home is I thought it was a great movie. I really personally enjoyed it. It definitely gave us a more neighborhood friendly Spider-Man, a slower, more grounded story versus a lot of the multiversal things that we are dealing with in um in the MCU overall. If I was to rate it, for me, I'd say it was an 8.5, 9 out of 10. Not a complete perfect movie. There's always things to say about it, but I thought it really ranked high in my heart. So I would say in my heart, this is the number one movie. No, excuse me. This is number two. Spider Man 3, with all of the Spider Man, is number one. Then this movie. Then I'd have to say Spider Man 2. And then, of course, the original. Jay, take us home.
All right, all right. Well, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought this movie was really good. It was great to see Tom Holland reprise his role as Peter Parker, coming back as our beloved Spidey. It gave us elements that we have seen before in previous movies, but at the same time, it didn't take away from the overall fun of it. I do think that the actual villains in this movie, Damage Control, I feel like they were kind of just one note. It really didn't do it for me because again, we kind of already figured that they were the villains anyway. And compared to all the other Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, I would say that this one is like more smaller scale. But at the same time, I will give it the fact that this is the most Spidey that we've really ever seen in any of the movies, just because he doesn't have Tony Stark tech or anything like that. This is his own homemade suit, his own powers that are manifesting. So the movie is different in that way. If I were to grade it out of 10, I would probably give it a 7.5. Like I said, solid, good time, smaller scale, really good movie, really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite of all the four that we've gotten. I will give you guys my rankings now. Feel free to come for me in the comments. It's all good. It's all love. But I would say number one for me would be Spider-Man No Way Home. Number two, Spider-Man No Way Home. Number one, Spider-Man Homecoming. Last, I will give to this one, Spider-Man Brand New Day. I know. You see King over there. I know. I get it. But like I said, compared to all the other ones, me myself, I did do a marathon of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies before I saw this one. This one was a bit more smaller scale, less stakes than the other ones. If you guys think I'm wrong, feel free to comment and let's talk about it. But again, thank you guys for watching this long. Thank you for all the love and support. Please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.